I'm going to talk about community trade unionism. Only a part of community trade unionism, but the most important part, which is how you build community support for a strike and what difference that makes to strikers. My examples, I'm going to start with examples that are drawn from foreign countries and from olden days in Britain, and I know you'll all be thinking that's all very well, but it never applied to us. But bear with me, because I'll come to how it can apply to us. I want to start with one example. The Chicago teachers' strike last year. That won. And the reason the Chicago teachers won was that the rank-and-file caucus that had taken over the union, the way they built that rank-and-file caucus was defending school after school after school against closure and organizing the parents of each of those schools to resist closure. And when they built the trade union insurgent slate that won the election, the union that took it over, they started with a meeting of parents and teachers. And that's the way they went on all the way through. And the result, and they fought not only over wages, not only over closures, they fought over decent futures for black and brown neighborhoods in Chicago and decent education for their children. Because they did that, when they came out on strike, the parents were overwhelmingly in favor of the teachers being on strike, which meant that the public opinion polls were overwhelmingly in favor in the city of Chicago, but it also meant that when the media came down to the picket line outside the school, there was always a parent there for them to interview who would say how much they supported the strikers. That's why they won. Take another example. Seems very different. Different place, much smaller city. The city of Burlington, Vermont in the United States had a strike last year this winter actually, by 70 bus workers. Burlington is not a very big city. Those 70 bus workers had behind them a community support group. And you can see how a community support group works by going to their Facebook page. It's called We Support the CCTA Drivers. And it's a lot of fun. Troll back through it to find out how it all started and so on. But what you see is that it was a community support group started by people on the left and by people in other unions and so on, but involving very large numbers of people. And the community they went to the bus riders, particularly the commuters, and they went and leafleted everybody who was taking the bus. They went the day before the bus strike, and then once the bus strikers came out, they went and leafleted the people at the bus stops whose lives, Burlington is a very cold place in the winter. Their lives were being impacted by those bus drivers, but because they had this big support group behind them, they had a lot of public support from the bus riders anyway. But also the community support group, they organized potluck suppers for the drivers, and everybody in the community supported them. They took everybody down to pickets of the school board. They took them down to pickets of the town government meeting in City Hall and so on. And again, the bus drivers won. Because the bus drivers felt like they were fighting for something much bigger than themselves. Another example. This time in Britain, but a long time ago. In 1982, I was on strike in the hospitals. We came out for 8 one-day strikes. We were fighting for pay, but we were also fighting for the future of the NHS. And we knew that we couldn't win on our own. We couldn't, because we had to provide emergency care for everybody. We had to provide the basic care. So our strike couldn't really hit. And so what we did was, first of all, this was inspired. The student nurses in Sheffield threw a picket line across the entrance to one of the mining pits, the coal mining pits. That was back when we still had miners in this country. And the student nurses stood there in uniform, 18, 19 years old, and the miners wouldn't cross their picket line. And that began, I was on strike in Bethnal Green in the geriatric hospital, and we went to the council workers down the road, we went to the bin depot, we went to the doctors, we went to Fleet Street, we went everywhere we could think of, and we said, we can't hurt, your parents are in the hospital, it's a geriatric hospital, we and your grandparents, we can't really hit the hospitals. So we're going to need you to strike with us. And each time we came out on strike, we had more and more and more and more people supporting us. One more example from history. In 1975, I was in a branch of a small far-left political party called the International Socialists, and there were two teachers in their mid-20s in that branch who were going on strike, on a one-day strike, and they came and told all the rest of us what they'd done in the last week. And what they'd done in the last week before they went on strike is they went out, each of them separately, every evening, and talked to the parents of every kid they taught in their homes. They went and knocked on the door and said, "I teach Johnny. I'm going to go out and strike. I know this will affect you. Let me tell you why I'm doing it." And they said, not only was it wonderful in getting support because people supported them, it changed the kind of teachers they were. It changed their relationship with the kids' parents, their understanding of the kids. Okay. How does that apply to what we do now? Because you think about this, and the first thing you say to yourself is, okay, maybe they do it in America, maybe it used to happen in this country, but honest to God, now we're Thatcher's children. Now we're in Britain, facepalm. People are afraid in this country. People are afraid, and everybody's been told this, every man, every woman, every family for themselves. How can that apply to what we do? It's a perfectly reasonable question. I want to try and answer it. First thing to say to answer it is the examples I was using from another country are from the United States. And if you think the unions and the working class are up against the wall in this country, and we are, you ought to see what things are like in the United States. If they can do it there now, we can do it here. But the other thing is you have to ask yourself, as you go into each dispute, or people in your neighborhood, people in your city, people in your industry go into a dispute, ask yourself what kind of support do they need from the people they actually deal with? Not the community in a general sense, the labor movement in a general sense, but what is going to be crucial? If you're going out and strike in an FE college, it's the students at the FE college. Maybe you can get to them as teachers, and maybe you're too scared to get to them as teachers. So maybe you need to hold a union meeting in a community center across the road from the college, if you're not brave enough to hold it in the college, where you can ask the students to come and then you can explain to them what you're doing. Or maybe, if you know people in the area, of course you know people who are related to the students in the college, you just keep asking. Ask everybody you know, get together a meeting of 3 or 4 students in the college, and you can do that if you're a teacher in the FE college, and you can do it if you're in the labor movement and you're not a teacher in the FE college. Get together 3 or 4 students to get together the rest of them, to build a movement among the students and among their families that's going to be out there supporting them. Or, if you're like the Ritzy strikers, and you're having one-day strikes against the management of a cinema, there's 2 things you can do that will make a big difference. One is get film stars. Have a meeting in a cinema or in a theater somewhere. Get film directors, get film stars, get every actor you can to come up on stage and say, "We support the Ritzy strikers." Think how that will make the Ritzy strikers feel. It will give them courage. But not only that, once you've had a whole audience at those meetings, then you've got people to go into the cinema showings and start chanting in support of the Ritzy strikers, not on the strike days, but on the other days, start chanting in their support at the beginning of the movie. If you feel that the people in your real life support what you're doing, that you are fighting for them, it transforms what you were able to do. Now, there are lots of other examples. I could give lots of other examples. But the examples of how you do it aren't the important thing. The important thing, and maybe my ideas as to what you should do, they're completely the wrong ideas of how you go about it, because the people in this situation will know much better exactly what you should do. But the question you have to ask is, how do you build the maximum community support? Because that is going to make the strikers feel like heroes, and that is going to enable you to win. The last thing to say, though, is this kind of community unionism. This is about mobilizing a community to support people who are prepared to fight. There is a school of community unionism which tries to mobilize political pressure in the community without going on strike. Usually that doesn't work, because what makes the community strong for you is that you are prepared to fight. And the final last thing to say is, if you want to do this, if you want to make this kind of thing real, don't do it as one political party. Don't do it as one small group of people. Get everybody you can in the neighborhood, in the industry, in the union meeting together to plan it with you, to do it with you, so that it's a movement not just of a small number of people, it's a movement of a community. Because in this country, right now, like in Chicago, like in Burlington, there are an awful lot of people who are seriously displeased about the way that things are and are looking around for anybody who wants to have a go. Thank you.